Alright.
Yep,
Hello.
that
I
should work.
believe we're
Hello.
live now. So my name is Nicole, and this is a live show discussion for the Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, or Cixin Liu, sorry, I said that wrong, which is a novel which was originally written in Chinese and has recently been translated into English, and the English release date was November 11th, so it's just a new release. This is a science fiction novel about two main characters who are both physicists, and one storyline is taking place in China during the Cultural Revolution, and it follows a woman who kind of goes through that, and then there's another story in the present timeline where there is this sort of physicist who gets brought in to this investigation to a number of mysterious deaths of other physicists that are going on. And so we'll be talking about that today. So my name is Nicole. My channel is Nicole's Adventures in Science Fiction, and there are a number of other panelists here with me, and they will introduce themselves now. So who wants to go first?
I'll go. I'm Elizabeth. My channel is Books and Pieces. I talk about science fiction, and I read this a few weeks ago, so I am desperately trying to remember what happened.
I'm Bree. My channel is Stories from the Shelf. I also read this a couple of weeks ago, so I've got the handy-dandy list of characters up on my Kindle, and I'm excited to talk today.
I am Caitlin, and my channel is Kitty G, and this is actually like one of the first sci-fi books that I've actually ever read, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm very excited to talk about this as well.
Hello, I'm Brock from Let's Read, and yeah, excited to talk about the Three-Body Problem, and probably the hardest science fiction novel I've read this year.
I'm Michael from Bitten by a Radioactive Book, and I read this book like 2 weeks ago. I was really fascinated by it, and I'm very eager to talk about it.
Okay. So thanks everyone for joining in. Where should we start? So, what do I want to start with? Okay, so do you want to start by talking about the characters? So we're going to start and try and keep it a little bit non-spoilery, and then later in the discussion we'll talk about spoilers. Because this is a novel, it has kind of a thriller-style plotline, so there's definitely a couple of reveals that it would be good to go in not knowing, so we'll talk about those later in the discussion. So for right now, why don't we start out with the characters. So there are two main characters, Yi Wenji, who is an astrophysicist and is living during the time of the Cultural Revolution, and then Wang Miao is the one who is living in sort of the present, and he is developing nanomaterials. So what did you all think about the characters? Let's start there. Or the main characters, anyway.
I was very smitten by Wang. He was a character I could relate to a lot. I think early on he gets into some really strange things are happening to him, and I think the way he reacts is or was very relatable to me. He does a lot of experiments and tries to figure out what happens to him. He's a bit panicky about it, but not too like oh, I'm so overwhelmed by everything, and he tries to find a solution. He knows where to go, and that was really positive. So I was really rooting for him, and could relate to him a lot. For Yi, it was I was more neutral towards her. I was more interested actually in her surroundings, because her storyline is the one that is set in the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and so as a character she was more neutral to me in the beginning. I got to like her later on, but more the plot things happening around her, the historical elements, that was what was really interested, or I was really interested in her parts.
Yeah, I would agree with like what you said. Basically, I one thing that I was really worried about going into science fiction, because I don't read much sci-fi at all, was that it was going to be way too complicated and that the main characters were all going to be really clever scientists and you wouldn't get anything. But they definitely felt like they were very approachable, sort of ordinary people just with scientific jobs, which I quite liked that element to each of the characters. So that was a good thing.
I didn't like Wang as much as you guys did. I thought he was a little bit boring. Like, he was a little bit bland to me. I kind of wished he had had a little bit more personality. I actually liked Yi better because I felt like she was a more interesting person. And although I did also, like, part of the thing that I really liked about her parts were what was going on around her in the Cultural Revolution and all the stuff that she was going through. So I guess I slightly disagree in that I liked Yi better than Wang.
What I thought
liked Yi better.
What Yi wasn't just like her surroundings, but also I think her responses are very interesting. Her responses to the cultural change and the political changes were really interesting. The part that I struggled with her was just that we didn't get, I think, a lot of the in-between time, so we didn't see her necessarily always have that full adaptation to her new surroundings and the new political systems. We kind of got snapshots of her at different points throughout that historical timeline, obviously because she wasn't the full focus of the book. I don't know. That was my struggle with Yi, but I did really like her. I thought she was a really interesting character, and a lot of really interesting stuff happens to her.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. She goes through a lot of shit, and she came out very interesting. Like, her reactions to stuff is obviously based on what she's gone through in life, and it's probably, I suppose we should probably point out that she is in the other storyline. Like, she's an older lady because it's like 40 years later or something, but yeah, she's still there. She's in both timelines, and you don't see her as much, but I found it was like, I was like wondering what on earth she was going to say and do that was so relevant in the new timeline. So I was like really like reading closely when she was in that bit, like what is she going to say, because it's obviously going to be relevant.
So this book was translated from Chinese, so most of the setting is in China. So what did you guys think about the way the book was set? I know we talked a little bit about the Cultural Revolution already, and I thought that was really interesting, and I think everybody else did as well. But what did you think about the setting and how that impacted the way the story was told? Because a lot of science fiction is told from, or a lot of the science fiction that I read anyway is told from the Western perspective. So how did you feel about getting a different perspective?
Gonna pick someone.
Brianna.
Sure. I think one of the real stars for me was that it is a very different setting from what I normally read. So, I mean, I read a lot of science fiction, but this was very, I think, it felt very urban-based, almost like reading an urban fantasy where the surroundings feel kind of gritty and kind of very centrally located. And then as far as, for me, I always pay a lot of attention to the political surroundings because that's, you know, something that I went to school for. And to me, it was really interesting in that regard because there's a very different relationship, I think, between the average person and the role of government in their lives. And so you have a very different setting as far as the politics of the world goes, the way that you have to interact with things like business and scientific organizations, and seeing that from a different perspective to me was very, very interesting.
Brock, do you have any?
I do, yeah. I'd say that the characters, or at least the historical setting for all this with the Cultural Revolution, they taught us about it in elementary school, but they might have skipped that one specific part. And so reading it, I was in the dark. At first I was like, well, didn't this happen and this happen? I actually had to go and research all of that to understand what was going on, because I was like, wasn't there an uprising earlier when the government switched over? And I was completely ignorant about that period. And that time, and so having to research it was kind of interesting because, you know, I got to learn, and that's what books should really do to us.
Ken Liu's footnotes, I think, were really helpful for that, too.
Mm-hmm.
The translator, so if you haven't read the book, the translator has footnotes throughout the book, and I thought those were very, very helpful. So he would sort of not translate some words, leave them in Chinese, or leave them as a very near approximation, and then just have a footnote explaining what it was, and that was often very helpful.
Yeah, I thought pretty much the same thing. It was like, it was just sort of translated enough, and there was just enough cultural history sort of politics thing that I was like, I could have read straight through without going away and finding out whatever had happened, but if I wanted to stop, I could, and I did, because I, like, yeah, Brock, I said, I knew nothing about this period, other than that there had been some kind of revolution, and just went away and found out about it, and now I'm just like, wow, I was so ignorant, like, that's so bad. So bad.
Yeah. And what was very interesting for me personally, because I'm German, is that in my country's history we went to like 2 periods of having very regime states like this, where people are not able to express how they feel towards the government, and we went to the Nazi regime, and then half of the country went also through that kind of socialistic and the communism part, and we just celebrated like 25 years of the Berlin Wall going down here last weekend, and so there's a lot of things that I know from personal relatives or from people I now get to know and to be friends with from the eastern part of Germany. When I was little, there was the wall around, and their experiences are really kind of in common what the characters experience in the book. And for me personally, that was very, very interesting, because I knew where they were coming from, and living kind of in a society like this.
Yeah, I also had no idea about anything in like China whatsoever, so I had to go and do some research too, and I'm again very glad. I don't think they teach that in England. Maybe it's just me, but I've never been taught about anything to do with China, so I had no idea. But it was really interesting that it started out quite politically, because that wasn't what I was expecting at all when I went into this book, so I think that was a really nice twist that was kind of thrown in straight at the beginning.
Historical period, I wasn't expecting that either, because with the cover art and with sort of the hype that people had, put into blogs and stuff before the book was released, and when they were comparing it to Dune, I thought originally the setting for this story was going to be out in outer space, that it would be like, a spacefaring civilization that China had ushered in, and then we'd be following along with that. So I was very surprised to find out that the story was that the story took place on Earth in a relatively contemporary setting to show us all this stuff.
In that same... Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, in that same vein, after the first introduction with Ye Wenji, it takes on very much a crime thriller tone, which isn't what I was expecting at all, really.
Yeah.
It wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't what I was expecting.
So the plot, as Brianna just mentioned, is kind of a crime thriller. A lot of the plot that's set in the present day is kind of a crime thriller type plot line. So what did you guys all think of the plot line? I liked it. I thought it moved fast enough that I was always engaged with it. But he took enough time to kind of explain what was going on that I wasn't ever really totally lost. So I thought it moved at a good pace and did that very well. Start with Elizabeth?
I thought it was good. I think like I said in my review, I think the thrilleriness goes a long way to explaining why it's so popular, because it's like drives you forward, and like it's very, I don't know, readable for science fiction, which can be a little bit of the like strange and obscure. Sometimes this was very, very approachable, very readable, and the plot just kept you going. But I don't know about it was totally paced right. I got a bit I figured it out. Come on, let's get somewhere. About maybe 2/3 through. I'm not sure. Maybe a bit less than that. And I was ready for something to happen. And we kept going off on funny little tangents.
Okay. How about Michael?
I think the plot moved very smoothly for me. I had a kind of a difficult time when we went, I think, second or third part, that was kind of dragging like a bit, but overall the pacing was really interesting. So maybe for the people who don't know anything about the book, the structure is that you have a part where that is about Yi Wenji and the Cultural Revolution, and these are like a few chapters, 3 or 4, and then you get to Wang, and he has a lot of chapters, like 5, 6, 7, I don't know, and only later on it swaps back to Yi. So we have like this the structure of having always a few chapters from each character's point of view, and but overall I think the flow was okay. It was I expected it to be a longer book, and I was really surprised that it was only like 400 pages, and I think overall Cixin Liu was very capable of crafting a well-rounded novel.
Well, I mean, it is the first part in a trilogy, so we've got more to come.
Yeah.
Does anyone know what the publication history was like in China? Like, did it all come out at once, or did they have a staggered publishing release, like book 1, book 2, book 3? Because I think a lot of the hype surrounding it is based off of the entire trilogy as it's completed being the big thing to get excited about and the big uproar about this series. And so was it released differently in China, or was it?
I believe it was kind of staggered, like every 1 to 2 years. I'll look right now.
Yeah, I want to say one of them was released in 2011, and that might have been the last one.
10.
Okay.
2006, 2008, 2010.
Okay. Yeah, so about every 2 years.
Thanks, guys. You're my Google. I'm looking up right in front of me, but thank you.
Yes, and so I guess the publishing schedule for the English translations is like once every 6 months. I think they're trying to put them out. So I think the next one is in like July, right?
Yeah, the next one's in July.
Yeah, or is scheduled for July. No. So they're doing like once every 6 months. So it could be published pretty quickly.
Regarding the setting, I guess a bit more, the fact that it's a kind of like a real world presentation, the fact that it's scientists and it's government agencies doing all these things. You know, the government agencies, I'm not sure how much of this is just the perception of the Chinese government or the nice perception of the Chinese government. They're presented as extremely competent. All the agencies and all the people are incredibly competent at their jobs and what they do. You know, Wang himself is a good scientist, and He Chiang, despite being a crazy cop, is still a really good cop, even though some people give him a hard time about it. He's not. He's a loose cannon, but he's not that loose of a cannon that he can't do his job. And I thought the book was nice to have a book that was giving really normal people, where they were spending a lot of time. We didn't get to see too much of their personal lives or their interests or anything, but it felt like a lot of this was they're just showing up for their day job and doing their normal job. Like especially Wang, you have to come here and be here, so he goes and does stuff. He's not like doing it for himself, even though some crazy things are happening to him. I don't know how much I should say about that.
Yeah, no, he's not the brave hero, is he? He's not like, yes, I shall save the world. It's just like, what the hell's going on?
I don't know, would we be allowed to talk about just that part at the beginning where he sees the clock, or is that not?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's pretty spoilery.
Okay. Just where at the very beginning where he can see a countdown, he takes a photo and he sees a countdown on the finished negatives or on the prints that he does. He's got this weird stuff going on, but the book spends a lot of time keeping you in the dark so that later on it can tell you what it all means. And you're just as lost as, say, Wang is, where you've been recruited to go and look into this mystery, but the pieces are so scattered that how do you really come to a conclusion about what's going on? I felt that Wang was very much in that boat.
Definitely. I thought it was really good, like, as soon as he started investigating this countdown started, and I was properly scared, because I was like, this is like a horror book now. I don't like horror, I was like, something horrific's going to happen, and I was so tense. Like, so tense, and then it stopped, so I was okay, but, like, my god.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing when the countdown started. I was like, oh god, is it going to be like everyone dies and it's just him? And like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I thought it was going to be something tragic and terrible. But, as it goes on, we discover more. But yeah, at first I was the same way. Which made it quite interesting.
That's where it felt like Independence Day to me, where like Jeff Goldblum, same thing. I discovered a countdown in the satellite signal. What happens when it hits 0?
Yeah.
Do we think this would make a good movie?
Yeah, I think so.
If it was done well, I think it would. I think because it's so like a sort of thriller that I think it
Very
would.
dramatic.
Yeah.
I think that you'd have to spend a lot of money on special effects, though. Not talking specifically about what those special effects would have to be, but you'd have to have a big budget to do well.
I also think you'd probably have to have a pretty good screenwriter, because there's a lot of physics in this, and the author does do a very good job of describing the physics, and it's fairly realistic as far as I can tell. So you would have to have a screenwriter who can do that, translate that, because movies are not always great with science, and you wouldn't have as much space to explain things in a movie. You have less room in terms of dialogue and written text to explain things. So I think it could be a pretty good movie. Could go horribly wrong.
Yeah, that's the same for any book, though, isn't it?
Sure. Although, okay, so I just mentioned that this is kind of hard science fiction novel, so there is a lot of talk about physics. How did you guys feel about that? So I guess my science background is pretty good. My undergraduate chemistry, actually, so I would have taken through quantum physics, so I understood, at least at the conceptual level, basically everything that they were talking about, and I thought, like I just said, that they did both the author and the translator did a very good job of explaining things. So, but yes, I'm probably more likely to understand that. So how did other people who don't come from the sort of science background, how did you all feel about the science aspects in the story?
Well, I did an English degree, so I have no science background, but I am a pretty hardened science fiction reader, so I guess I'm pretty used to those sort of things appearing, and I guess figured out how to either extrapolate the basics or just let it kind of wash over you and you get the gist. Like, that was fine. As books with a lot of science in go, this was, like you say, well explained, and I didn't have a problem with it. It wasn't anything I didn't think, I literally don't have a clue what's going on. You could always get the basics.
Yeah, I have no background whatsoever in science, and I don't even read like science fiction very much, so I had no knowledge of anything. I had never heard of the three-body problem. Like, I thought when I read the title it was about 3 bodies of humans. I honestly had no idea. I didn't know what the book was about before I picked it up. I didn't do any research into it. I had not heard anything about it. It's just like all of you guys had it, and I was like, yeah, I want to join in. So, but I did manage to understand all the concepts, and I do think it was really well explained for someone who's got no background knowledge whatsoever. I think it was really well explained, and I do think I understood all the general stuff that you really had to understand. Maybe the more technical bits, not so much, but everything that you needed to understand to get the story, I think I was there.
Yeah, I think the book used a lot of very good examples to make you understand what's going on. So for me, it is the same. I actually thought in the beginning the 3-body problem would be kind of a murder mystery with three bodies turning up. For example, I'd never heard of it before, and my science background is like, I know when I trip and I fall on my face, that's gravity. That is my basic, yeah, that is my kind of education about science. This is the level I understand, and for me it was very accessible. There were parts in it where I think, yeah, okay, that might be a bit over my head, but the general ideas were always, yeah, supported by examples, and it was quite easy to understand. That was, yeah, I was really surprised, because in the beginning, for me, it's also like, okay, it's a translation into English, but English is not my first language, and then there is that problem as well. If there are words that I even don't know what they mean in German, and then I have to translate them as well. But it all worked out. It was really well done.
There are books. Oh.
No, you go. I keep doing this. You go.
No, you go. You go. I'm fine.
I was going to say, I had very much the same experience where I don't have a strong science background, but it was always very accessible. The only times that I ever had any kind of a struggle, there are a couple of moments where he's talking about quantum physics, and he's trying to give this visual of what this specific quantum physics thing is going to look like. And it got a little bit like trippy for me. Like, I was trying to imagine it, and I was like, what is this actually looking like? But we'll talk probably more about that in spoilery bits.
So when it comes to an understanding of physics, I have none. I mean, you read certain things on, articles and IO9 where they talk about some of the discoveries that scientists make sometimes, especially some of the particle stuff that happens later, which I won't talk about. But that stuff, they kind of lost me, because I only understood the basic principle of it, but not how any of it was achieved. And so there's a lot of what is going on later bits, and especially with Three-Body Problem, it takes you through kind of like a really brief history of some of these things and some of these concepts. Well, it tells you most of them, and you can kind of follow along. There's a few towards the end that I just felt were very, very hard to understand for me. And you look at books like Anathem, where they do a similar thing, where they take you through the history.
I was going to bring that up.
They take you through the history of philosophy and scientific, research and thought, and it holds your hand, even though it's throwing a lot of material at you. And this book does it up to a point. And after that point, it just sort of says, and now we're going to get into the deep stuff. So now you really have to know what we're talking about. You're on your own.
The really nice thing that I thought was there is when Wang first starts investigating what's going on, and he's first kind of sent into the more crime thriller section of the book, he's introduced to this video game called Three-Body, and in that is where they do a lot of the hand-holding. He's kind of trying to get through these levels that are explaining some of these scientific things, and I thought that that was very useful, because it also uses a lot of not necessarily real-world examples, but a lot of illustrations of what the things are looking like, and that I thought was really useful and well done.
So
yeah, that's a really good point.
So so I guess going off of that, in Wang's storyline, he gets recruited to look into the deaths of these physicists, and part of what he starts looking into is this video game that Brianna just mentioned, which is called the Three-Body Problem, because a lot of the physicists who have died have been playing this game, and so he's trying to figure out what the game is all about, and it actually sounded like a really cool video game. I thought it would be a lot of fun, where it just kind of like drops you into this world, and sometimes there are chaotic eras where like the sun won't rise and it's really cold, and there's like not seasons or a normal day length, and then there are stable eras where there's a normal day length and everything else. So I don't know. What did you guys all think about the video game? I thought it was cool. I thought it was a good way to kind of explain information in a way that's kind of relevant to how we live, because I can kind of like imagine how this video game would work,
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's interesting to think of it as like a full body experience, because the video game system they have hooks up to like, it simulates in your body what's going on. And so that to me was really cool too. So we're just getting a lot of information, but also it's like a cool idea conceptually, just this whole video game.
Yeah, but the thing about the game is, it is no game. It's a terrible game. It's a boring game because if you really look at it, a Wang does nothing. There are parts like the first time he goes into the gaming is about interactivity, and he does nothing. There are like NPC characters who are all named after Eastern or Western scientists, and they do all the talking, they do all the theories, they explain everything. And Wang is like, oh yeah, it's like he's watching a movie. He does nothing. He meets someone, and then they say, oh, we go to this town, and she's like, yeah, I'll tag along. And then the NPCs in the game explain everything. He does nothing, and then they come to the town, and then stuff happens, and all the NPCs are doing stuff, and he does nothing. He just observes, and the amount of interactivity by the player is like nothing. So yeah, I could really understand that that later on when people talk about the game, they say, yeah, most of the younger players weren't interested in that. That wasn't their thing, and only a few like scientists played it in the end. Yes, of course, I can see that because it's a terrible game.
I did think that was like, this is just standing around listening to obnoxious people talk about really bad science.
And at the end, by doing nothing, you just happen to get a high score in how many days you've managed to make it.
Yeah. It's like, congratulations, you're still alive.
The game made it into this and that area, and you did nothing for it, but this is the highest thing that ever happened to this game. Well done, AI.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it definitely felt like more of a just virtually going into a film than a game. But I do think that it really did help me, especially like to work out what was going on scientifically. The way everything was illustrated and the way that it was all described definitely was made so much easier by that game, and that for me held a lot of my interest. Like, that was definitely some of the sections of the book that I found most interesting, because it was explaining in a really interesting way, so that was good.
It did help you like level up the science, I suppose. Like, it was sort of like every time they went in the game, it was like, here's a slightly more weird concept, and you could be like, oh yeah, okay, I can fit that in. But yeah,
Yeah, it was the provider of the scientific information, and on the other hand, I really think there are a lot of philosophical elements in it. I was really interested in the part they say, Nicole talked about it, we have areas there that are chaotic areas, and in these chaotic areas, the actually people who live in this game, or the NPCs, are able to, what was it called?
dehydrate.
Dehydrate. All right. They dehydrate their bodies, so they shrank down, and or shrink down, and then they can't be like that much affected by the chaotic area. And when the chaotic area is gone, they all rehydrate and can now live. And in the beginning, one of the NPCs says, when the game is in a chaotic area, that is a sign that the NPCs believe is that God is alive and awake. And when God is alive, then everything is like chaotic. And when God is asleep, these are the stable areas. And when you look at what the people do, it's the opposite around. So when God is awake, then the people go to sleep. And only when God is asleep, the people come out. And the way I see it, and at the point always where some of the NPCs came up and says, oh, I think I have figured out a system how the universe works, or how God works, then it comes to the point where the things are getting messy, and then they try to predict how the three-body problem works, and they always fail. They always think at this moment where they think they understand the universe, when they think the human has understood the nature of God, then all goes haywire. And I think this is a very interesting, like philosophical look at the relationship between God and human, that the human always tries to understand it, and always when he is at the point and thinks now we know everything about God or the universe, then it turns out to be no, that's not it, and then we try anew. That is the kind of other thing that always happens. The humans try again and again every time.
Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't even thought of that, but when you explained it, that made sense to me. So yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. And plus, like, generally just the idea of them dehydrating when it was a chaotic era, that just was a really interesting idea to me. Like, I really liked the sort of visual images that I conjured up when that was going on. I think that was a really cool concept in the book.
I thought it was kind of gruesome.
Pretty gruesome as well, yeah.
Wrinkly, flirty people.
Yeah.
first
I
time
think
it
they're
started
probably like
happening.
sitting in a puddle.
Like, can you imagine just standing there being a newcomer to the game, and all of a sudden people start dehydrating and turning into beef jerky right before your eyes, and you just have to accept
Goo's
that?
gonna come out.
I was like, did I miss something? This was not explained to me. This is. Is this a thing?
I hadn't thought about it, but I guess when they all dehydrate, there must be like a puddle of like water around them, like they're in a little lake.
But because in the simulation, because it's presented as being on Earth, or an Earth with three suns that it's orbiting around and through, I just thought it was weird that they all of a sudden threw that in, where you're sitting there and all of a sudden the rules are completely different than what you had expected them to be, and all of a sudden humans are doing this, and there was no warning or hinting at that's what was going to happen beforehand. It was just, and now everyone goes to sleep, and like, that's not Earth. What's going on?
Yeah, because for the first bit you're like, okay, this is just a weird history thing, and then it was like, oh, okay, not so human.
Alright, so do you guys want to talk about kind of like overall, do you plan on reading the next book? What rating did you give this? And then after that we can move into some of the spoilery bits.
Before we go full spoiler,
Okay.
I thought we could talk a little bit about how it was, like at the beginning, the threat was stop doing science. Like there was the countdown, and everybody's a scientist. Like the whole thing revolves around scientists, and the threat was stop doing science, and the countdown will stop. And then later on, that is sort of like explained a bit, but I thought it was really interesting, like how that was sort of the focal point. That sounds really weird, but like lots of science fiction, the science is like central to it, but not actually what everyone's talking about. This was very much like, I don't know. What did everybody think?
You thought it was interesting that the science and scientific development was the point of conflict as opposed to kind of something that's going on in the background?
There was like, in the Cultural Revolution, science was questioned and became an issue, and education became like forbidden, and then we jumped to like the contemporary-ish sort of now, and suddenly science became an issue again for unknown reasons, and it was, I just found the like parallels really fascinating. Anybody else have any thoughts about science?
I mean, I did think it was interesting that all the main characters are science, and kind of that the scientific development is a major point of conflict and a major plot point within the book, and that it's something that is really focused on in that way, because you're right, a lot of science fiction, you know, even if a character is a scientist, their plot will still be like a love story or trying to save the world or something, and in this case it was very focused on scientific development in a way. And I did think that was interesting, and I don't know, I enjoyed that because That's
Science.
what I do, yeah.
The scientists at the beginning of the story who have committed suicide, because them saying physics does not exist, I don't know how much my own personal worldview would be shattered if I found out that the laws of thermodynamics were different than what I had originally thought, or things involving particles. It would make me reevaluate what has changed, but I don't know if I would be able to conclude, well, physics doesn't exist, therefore I'm going to kill myself. I mean, I'd almost think that if that was the case, you got to be like a really hardcore physics nerd or something to really have to be that shattered by everything. Because I'd almost think that with scientific thinking and scientific thought, when the theory is disproved or not supported by current evidence, you either reformulate or try to discover why that's the case. And
Totally.
I can
Yeah.
understand, like, when it's your job to be a physicist, you'd be really stressed out, being like, well, all the math that I've done isn't adding up here. But I'd almost think some people would be more likely to just go into a different field or get a different job rather than give up on existence because physics isn't what they thought it was. That I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say I thought it was a little bit melodramatic, although the way the author is presenting the changes that are happening in physics is like, it would be a really big deal, and it would, yeah, like, I can understand being really devastated by that. I guess I don't totally understand the idea of, like, committing suicide or anything because of that, but I can understand being very devastated because essentially what's happening is all these people are, dedicating their lives to particle physics and developing these ideas, and then they're collecting the experimental data, and it's just totally not matching up at all, and there's no really logical conclusion for them to come to. And, like, I can see how that would be really devastating as a human being. Like, you can look back at, like, the development of quantum physics itself and how, thermodynamics and quantum physics don't necessarily agree all the time. And at the time when theory of relativity and quantum physics were being developed and first postulated, you can look at kind of the reactions of some of the people who disagreed with that and who were kind of on the other side and see, like, how really upset about that some people were, because some people, were very upset about it. And so I think to some extent it's understandable. I'm not sure. I did feel like the book was maybe a little bit melodramatic and a little bit over the top on that, but I can sort of understand the basic emotion.
I guess if you had the weird, creepy numbers flashing up everywhere and like strange stats in this freaky fucking game, like maybe all combined, but yeah.
I think people would see you as being a little bit crazy because it's like, well, I'm seeing this, there's this countdown. I can see this countdown in my head. With counting down right now, I can count you by the second. And oh yeah, and by the way, physics doesn't exist. I can see like some people perceiving those people to be crazy, but I'm surprised there wasn't like a coming forward or somebody trying to convince people of that, to say there's something going on that I think is really weird. Nobody's going to believe me, and all I have is this clock thing. but trust me,
nobody ever says anything to anybody in all these
that kind of figure who is like, they're reacting to them saying you're a crazy person, or they would be on the verge of a new scientific discovery that would again change what we know and give us a deeper understanding of everything. In the end, I would think that that's the kind of angle they'd have to come at it from. It'd be like, well, everything I know is not correct, but I'm trying to formulate a new theory as to why that's the case, instead of, I give up.
Yeah, well, that's what Wang did, isn't it? Like, he goes to the doctor and he's like, hey, I'm having issues, like, I can see a countdown. And the doctor's like, yeah, I think you're just, you need some rest, go back to bed, sort of thing. But he went and he spoke to someone, so I don't know if the idea is that everyone went to their doctor and their doctor just said they need more sleep, but, maybe that happened.
Well, that may be the case because, like, you had mentioned him going to the doctor and mentioning the clock, and so maybe that's what was going on, is things were happening to these characters that
maybe
they
just
knew were too crazy. So maybe that makes sense to me, that they were pushed there by some of the external forces that were acting on them. So I can see that.
But the part that's confusing to me about that is that presumably these are all members of the same scientific community who must at the very least know of each other and have some sort of contact, because there are a lot of people who are killing themselves. And they're killing themselves over, like, instances that they're all kind of experimenting on similar stuff. and like that they're not communicating about those findings and being like, what is happening? Why are these things so vastly different, even though they're supposed to be pretty similar? To me, it surprises me that that doesn't spark community-wide conversation as opposed to like internal meltdown, if that makes sense.
I
Would
think
spark community-wide conversation, but the thing I think you have to remember is that often, like, I'm not directly emailing people who are other people in my field like every day. Like, the way major scientific discoveries are reported is through going to conferences or through publishing papers, and those things, there's often a lag time of a year or two between when the discovery happens and when it's reported. So, like, when it's reported in public. So, like, maybe I'm talking to other people in my field, and maybe this comes up, but, like, again, if you think you're going crazy, are you really going to start mentioning that to people who are your competitors? You know, like...
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that were not talked about in this regard is that it is an Asian novel. It's written by someone who's Chinese, and there's all these elements we just talked about. If you think about the melodramatic stuff, if you think about how all the wuxia martial arts movies work, and if you look into animes, this kind of melodramatic, being melodramatic over very, for us, from a Western point of view, maybe like common things that we wouldn't get worked up about. This is a very stylistic element that is very often used in Asian media. So I thought that was a part from the book being actually Asian. That explains that, and as well, the thing I studied Japanese culture, and one of the main elements of many Asian cultures is that the single like person is not as important as in our society, where we're all about personal freedom, expressing ourselves, being unique. In Asian culture, it's often very, very preferred to be part of the society, to not stand out. And there are a lot of taboo themes that you don't actually talk about, that you even today in some families don't talk to about with your own parents. And coming from that kind of cultural angle, I can totally understand why somebody who thinks he's going crazy in an Asian community says, no, I'm not going to talk about that. Is something that would make me seem weak toward the others and maybe be a problem for them, and I don't want that. So there is something where actually the point of reading a non-Western novel really comes out for me.
I could see an element of that, but mostly I just accepted it as part of the standard thriller thing, like something really dramatic has happened, I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm just going to try and like solve it, like, because I'm the hero. Like, you know, it happens all the time, doesn't it? Where you're like watching a horror movie being like, why don't you just tell someone or turn on the lights?
No, I think that is a good point, though, that might just have a lot to do with cultural difference and how, in the way that it's written at the very least.
Where we also often see that in the three-body problem game itself, where people always are from either Eastern scientific communities or Western, and the terms East and West are very often used also in other parts of the novel. In Yi's perspective, there is one time where she talks about how the people in the base she works in work, and she deliberately uses terms like some of them went east and went west. So this kind of Eastern-Western conflict is always underlying in the novel. And I was actually surprised, because from my Western point of view, I think the Western way of looking at things gets often very positive reactions from the author.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed as well, is that it didn't seem to have a negative light on the Western world very much, which I was thinking it would. But no, you're definitely right there. Like, it seemed like the author agreed with a lot of Western thinking, which was quite interesting.
Well, the official party line in China is that the Cultural Revolution is a negative thing, was a negative thing. So, in opposition to it, the destruction of science and the poor decisions made at the time and stuff. It's a good thing to look negatively on them, which is a good thing. Because I feel very bad. But yeah. Because I had some comments when I did my review that, oh wow, I was really surprised that they could be so negative, and it's like, no, that's kind of how you've got to be now.
Alright, so do you want to do everybody overall rating, and do you plan on reading the next book? I guess I'll start. So I gave this one 4 stars. I liked it quite a bit, and I really liked a lot of the ideas that are in the book. I wish the characters had been a little bit stronger, I guess. And I did think, as a couple of people mentioned, the pacing at the end gets a little bit funky and a little bit slow, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. But I did overall really like it, and I would recommend it to people who like hard science fiction books. I would definitely recommend it, and I do plan on reading the next books in the series when they're out. So, Kitty, you want to...
I also gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I enjoyed it a lot considering it is like the first sci-fi book I've really read, to be honest. So I would definitely want to continue on with the series when the next ones come out, because I'm intrigued by the end of the book and I want to know what happens next. And yeah, I felt like it was a really easy read to get into, so I definitely want to continue on when they come out.
Brock?
I'd give it 3.5. I know it's on Goodreads, it's just 3, but I'd give it 3.5 for being like a really intriguing story. But at the same time, I'm also kind of reserving some judgment on the book just because I want to see what the next books will have to offer. There's a lot of story that I think will hinge on what goes on in those books that I need to read those ones first before I can really know how I feel about this thing.
Okay. And do you plan on reading the next books?
Oh, yes. I definitely plan on reading the next book. For sure. Yes.
All right. And Brianna?
I also gave it a 4. I'm really actually looking forward to the next couple books. I haven't pre-ordered them yet, but I'm probably going to.
And Elizabeth?
I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but it was more of like a 3.6, 3.7 maybe, that, like, to be very, very specific. Like, it was good. I had some issues with the pacing, with the characters. I don't know if I'll read the next ones, like, when they come out. I'm not that excited by it. That was my problem, the ending. I was just like, yeah, not sure I care. Especially if none of the same characters are in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I'm
it's not
looking
something I
forward to
wouldn't
reset.
pick up. Sorry?
I'm looking forward to a new set of characters just to see. I mean, and that would make sense because of what is going on at the end of the first book, or at least what all the characters are expecting will come. I think that realistically that would go into a different set of people, a different set of characters. And because this novel is trying to kind of be realistic in its portrayal, Wang himself is not the penultimate hero who is going to well, I guess he is. He's not going to be the guy who like solves every single problem that comes up. You know, he is only a portion of this much greater story, and that's why other characters are going to come in and take over, is because there's a much bigger thing going on that not just one person by themselves could possibly solve.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I wouldn't not pick it up. I'm just not sure I'll be like, yes, I must read it immediately when it comes out. That said, I did have some comments from some Chinese readers who said, like, oh my god, if you think this is a really good book, you wait for the next one, it's even better, and then the one after that's, like, even better than that. So.
Yeah, I have to say as well, I really enjoyed it, but on a bookish level, it was also more like a 3.54 read for me. But I gave it 5 stars because, like I already said, the kind of philosophical questions, the things we are going to talk about in the spoilers, how well the novel is crafted, was mind blowing for me. There is so many cool stuff going on a literary level, what the author does so right, and I had this was the book this year that I had to put down the most while reading it and think about it, and yeah, it was the read this year that made me think the most, and therefore I awarded 5 stars, and I'm definitely going to pick up the next parts as soon as they come out.
Alright, so that is the non-spoilery bits, so we're going to talk about some of the reveals that happen in the book now. So if you haven't read the book and you want to be surprised by those bits, you should leave, and we'll see y'all later. If you have read the book already, then feel free to stick around, and we will talk about what happens kind of in the second half of the book. Okay, so it turns out, you find out about halfway through the book that the thing that's causing all of the weird stuff that's happening is... Oh, Brock has something. Okay. I'll finish.
Yeah, this was a comment that was posted a while ago, and it says, spoiler, I think the game was used more like a recruiting tool to see how one understands this new world and reacts to the things that's happening in their civilization. Wang's understanding about the world increased with each exposure he had with the game, and that increased his points. I guess it was about how close to a solution a gamer came to by being a supporting role, sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. By being a supporting character or just someone on the ride. Wang does contribute in Tri-Solar Day or can't remember. In the end, it doesn't end well for him. But yeah, it's interesting. Wang used Copernicus as his login ID. So I guess with 3-Body being a recruiting tool for, we're in the spoiler territory, so we can do this. So with 3-Body being a recruiting tool for the organization that is seeking to welcome our new alien overlords, I can see that making sense. So the people who stick around are most likely the people who will support that cause, I guess.
And they're more likely to have the influence to alter, like, younger students, right? Like, if you are understanding what's going on in the 3-Body problem, you're going to be somebody who's probably, like, teaching science or fairly influential, at the very least within a small group of people. And so it was very much, instead of an interactive game, it was like a solve the riddle, and then we'll talk to you in, I don't know, L. Ron Hubbard you.
Yeah, and the aim was to destroy science. Like, that was the explicit aim, was to ruin all science, make it completely unbelievable, and make everybody think it's the end of the world, and like killing yourself's a good idea, and the environment's disastrous. And no, wait, was environmentalism meant to be a good thing or a bad thing?
It was kind of a good thing. So they were trying to distract people with like cases where science went wrong in the environment and disasters. So one of the guys. Yeah, so like one of the guys in the Frontiers of Science Society was looking into genetically modified plagues of crops. Like, that was what they said he was looking into. So, yes, it was kind of a good thing and a bad thing.
So if you influence all the science teachers to think that science is destroyed, that's gonna trickle down quite well, I think.
Well, it was also about preventing people who had that knowledge from attempting any type of resistance, so that if they didn't believe that anything would work, they wouldn't bother going into space or trying to come up with technologies that they could use to counter an alien invasion.
Anybody think it was eerily reminiscent of the beginning of the book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I was going to say.
It's actually a straight-up parallel. It's the ending is exactly the same as the beginning, exactly. And if you look into it, it is what the aliens do. They build some kind of the so-called sophons. That I think sophons are they called? Are they?
Sophons, yeah.
Sophons, yeah. That are like constructed in multi-dimensional, in 6-dimensional space. And the very important thing, I'm going to talk about a bit about Chinese numerology here later on. This is why I'm going to stuck so much to the numbers. They build it in 6-dimensional space, and this 6 is made up of a 4, because we humans only know 4 dimensions at the time, and we have like 2 dimensions that the sophons are built in that we not know of at the moment. And they are building, overall, they build like 6 sophons. There is the 6 again, and the first 2 of them don't work out and are destroyed, and 4 of them remain. So the 6 is made up again of a 4 and of a 2. And they use these 4 sophons and send them to Earth. And on Earth, they sent 2 of the remaining 4 to Earth. And these 2 are, they're instructed to go into 2-dimensional space and hinder the human society or the human scientists to progress beyond 4-dimensional space. So again, we have a 6 made up of a 4 and a 2. And so in the beginning, we have the, or in the end, we have the alien race that wants to bring a kind of revolution in the same way the cultural revolution does their kind of revolution in the beginning. And the aliens want to do this by destroying science. There's actually the sentence in this, by kill science. And what we see in the first chapter, we witness a scientist being killed by the cultural revolutionists. So it's a straight up parallel. The cultural revolutionists kill the scientists in the same way the aliens, the Trisolarians, want to kill science. And if you look a level deeper, they do it with this 4 kind of sophons that were 6 and constructed in 6-dimensional space. And when you look at the first chapter, the scientist who is killed is accompanied on like the execution stage by 6 people. 2 of them are males, and they don't partake in the killing. And the 4 female cultural revolutionists, again there's the 4, they kill the scientists. So the 4 girls are actually the parallel to the 4 sophons that the Trisolarians built. And that is all not a coincidence, it's on purpose. Because in Chinese culture, the number 4 is an unlucky number. Because the kanji, the sign for the number 4 is pronounced shi in Chinese. And the number for death is also pronounced shi. So death and 4 are kind of significant. And in the same way, we don't have like 13 floors in many Asian buildings, like because we think 13 is an unlucky number. In many Asian buildings, there is no 4th floor, because the 4 is an unlucky number because it represents death. Because all the numbers are not, as I said, are not like a coincidence there. They have a meaning. And if you then look into that kind of thing, and that is why the novel is so well constructed, you can make really crazy things. Because if the like 4 sophons are really connected to the 4 girls, then it will be very important that in Yi's perspective we learn what happened to the girls. Because Yi confronts the remaining girls that killed her father in the end, and one of them has died, another one lost her arm, another one got very fat, and another one got very thin. So my prediction would be actually for the next book, if they are really connected in this way, that the humans will achieve to kill one of the sophons or destroy one, harm another, and then the Trisolarians will put the other 2 into other dimensions, because one will get smaller, maybe in more higher dimensional space, probably 6-dimensional, and the other one will get bigger, like they're trying something on a 1-dimensional level. That would be my kind of prediction for what is going to happen. And another interesting thing then is that the detective, Dai Shi, is also called Shi. So he has the same kind of thing and death, and I'm dying to know what his kanji is. What if he has actually one of the same kanjis, because there are like 20 or 30 that are pronounced Shi, and I don't know which it is because I only have like the English text in front of me. And so, but just by having the name of Shi, I personally would assume that he's going to die as well. So, and that is why
I wanted to class 5 minutes ago. I just get to now.
that is why I was so impressed by the way the book was constructed, and that is why I was so mind blown by it.
Fair enough. I think
You're not going in that level of detail.
No, that's crazy.
For the bit they were talking about, where is it? It was like, there. Relativity is part of the fundamental theories of physics. This is Yuanji's dad when he is about to be executed, or he's being tortured in order to recant his terrible beliefs in physics, because apparently Einstein is a reactionary academic authority, and to build a revolutionary science we must overthrow the black banner of capitalism represented by the theory of relativity. So basically they're trying to overthrow physics, the basic fundamentals of physics. So you have to believe that physics doesn't work in the opening sort of bit in the Cultural Revolution, and then that's exactly what the aliens are trying to achieve at the other side. I thought it was interesting. But yeah, crazy, amazing, number theory as well. Wow.
There's also a parallel with the four olds of the Cultural Revolution that are briefly mentioned, and that I assume if you were Chinese you would know, which is, what is it, old customs, old culture, old ideas, and old habits. That's what the Cultural Revolution was trying to overthrow or destroy. And obviously that extended out to science. But yeah, there was also 4 of those.
Yeah.
I picked up on that there was a lot of 4s, but I didn't pick up on everything that Michael did.
I didn't think women fared too well overall either, to be honest. You got the 4 Revolutionary Guards. They weren't very nice. You've got the dead girl, very symbolic at the beginning, whose body is so soft that the bullet just goes straight through her because girls are so soft. And then you got Yi Wenji, who's just well, poor thing. And that's it. And it was a bit like, oh wow, bleak much.
Well, even where Yi Wenji ends up, I guess she's embraced that bleakness. She doesn't feel that there's not a good reason for her to believe in humanity or in humans, well, at all, because of her past experiences and because of what she knows is coming.
No, but I thought that she is one of the people who believes that it's redemption, that things are going to get better because of the aliens. That's what.
Well, she also believes people are gonna things are gonna get better because of the aliens, because a lot of people are gonna die.
Yeah, but not everybody. She doesn't think that she's not out to destroy all of humanity. She honestly believes that things are gonna get better. It's like the game. You can keep every season that destroys people. They keep going, and she keeps going, and then you get another horrific betrayal of her at the end. But yeah, she was hopeful as opposed to some of the others.
Do you guys want to back up a little bit and talk about what the Earth Trisolaran Society, which is the group of people, the group of humans who are led by Yi Wenji, who initially contacts the aliens, and are trying to welcome the aliens, and who have kind of their own little factions within. So there's the Advantist, who believe the aliens will come and just completely destroy humanity, and that's the best for everyone. And then there are the Redemptionists, which is what Yi Wenji was. Wait, or was she an Advantist? Did I get those mixed up? I don't remember.
No,
anyway,
you're right.
I think you're right.
And the Redemptionists believe the aliens will come and it will be terrible, and then we'll all be better for it. And then there was the last group, who I can't remember off the top of my head, who believed that the aliens will come and they will serve the aliens, and for that they'll be rewarded. And so they kind of think they're like sacrificing the rest of humanity so that they can survive. So what did you all think about the different factions within the Earth Trisolarian Society? And they're all very bleak. Do you think a lot of people would, join this society, like, in reality? I was kind of thinking about it, and, like, I wouldn't, but I feel like there are a lot of people who would be like, yeah, aliens come to destroy the world. That's what's best for humanity. Like, I don't know. It was an interesting, and having the different factions as well kind of interested me, because they weren't like a monolithic idea of what the aliens were going to be about. They're very different ideas about what the aliens were going to do when they showed up. So anyway, what did you all think about?
They're going to be on the surviving side, so.
What is that interesting thing? Like, didn't one of the factions, I can't remember which one, like kept all the messages back from the other ones, and like from the aliens, they kept all their messages. So whatever the other two were believing, like they didn't have all the facts, so no one really knows what's going on. And even the group who kept the messages, they still don't really know, like, for sure that the aliens are telling them the truth or anything. So it's all a bit crazy. I think you'd have to be quite an extreme person to join up with that sort of faction willingly and, say, oh, it's fine, I'm gonna align with the aliens coming. It's a bit weird.
Mm-hmm. That was a really, like, a strange point for me, but then I was talking to a viewer who lives in China, and he was saying, like, there's a, like a small but significant portion of the Chinese society that really welcomes, like, U.S. invasion and thinks that would be, like, a significant and really good thing if the U.S. took over. And, like, that when he said that, like, that made more sense. Like, okay, if there's already this existing kind of group in society that thinks that, vast radical change would be good, it doesn't make it's not as inconceivable that seeing, like, a higher life form, right, coming in would be a bad thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
an interesting.
I think if you look at it, it's kind of the three-body problem of the human or Earth Tri-Solarian organization, because they have like three different mindsets and groups, and you can't predict in the end in which direction the organization is going to move. So it's like again the symbol of the three-body problem in it, and therefore, and that was very interesting what Bree just said, I don't know too much of Chinese modern day politics to know if there might be actually some synonyms in their society as well, where Chinese reader would actually pick up and go, yeah, that's what he's talking about. That could be a possibility, and I think if he takes it like having the three-body problem, then the three-body problem of the of this created society, and maybe in the end he wants to say something about a three-body problem that the Chinese society is in at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure.
Yeah, the whole time I was reading, I felt like I was missing out on some kind of subtext about, like, current China, but I wouldn't even know where to begin picking up on that.
Yeah, there's a lot that you just don't. There's a lot that you just don't get. Having not grown up there or lived there or anything, there's a ton that just gets missed, and I mean, ultimately, I'd say the same with like the symbology and the numerology. I didn't get any of that, like, at all. Like Zippo, I saw Zippo parallels between one story element and another, and it's hard to parse if that's because of just we don't understand the politics, or if it's because of the different writing and storytelling styles, where we would emphasize certain aspects of story over another, or like the Chinese way of what they focus on that's important to their storytelling tradition, and as good as the translation is, a fair bit gets lost just because of our own lack of familiarity.
Yeah, although that's true of any translated work, or I mean, even reading something that's like from England, if it's like in super slang or something like that, I'm gonna totally miss. Or if they're talking about, you know, Labour Party politics in England, I don't know anything about that.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
I thought a lot of it was like intellectualism versus like, or you know, one kind of belief, like really getting into the intellectual side of science to the exclusion of humans and interrelationships and things, and the same with like politics or whatever. If you fail on the human side of things, because that's what UNG is missing. She doesn't have a human side because there's no. All her relationships are really messed up.
Yeah.
Really messed up. Whereas Wang has those. He has a wife and a child and friends, and Dashi comes and like looks after him, and you know, there's people and they talk to each other and it's nice, and that's kind of how it's all okay or not.
Yeah.
But
One thing about like Wang as well with his wife and stuff, just whilst you're mentioning it, I really liked how she was kind of a part of it to begin with, and like when he started thinking he was going crazy, like the first person he speaks to about it is like her. He's like, you know, are you seeing this? And you know, gets her involved, and then suddenly she just vanishes from the story and he goes off on his own journey, and I really didn't like that she just wasn't a part of it anymore.
Yeah,
she had been at the beginning. I was a little bit like, what?
I did think it was. I also thought it was a little bit weird that his family like totally disappears, and like at the point towards the end of the book when he goes to the Panama Canal, and it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna.
Yes.
They all just show up there.
Going on holiday, guys.
Like that threw me a little bit because it was just a little bit like, okay.
Yeah.
yeah, that was thoroughly weird. Why?
I was just
yeah,
like, why mention them if they're gonna vanish?
Yeah, because involved and he was talking to her, and then he just stopped talking to her. And if you were worrying that you were crazy or that the world was going to end, isn't the first person that you're going to like talk to your spouse?
Yeah, exactly. It was just a strange thing.
Pretty standard for like your thriller
I
thing.
do-
Family rather disappears.
Yeah.
He doesn't take his work
At least
home.
they didn't like die. Yeah. At least they didn't die for no apparent reason. They're still around. We just don't see them anymore.
They just.
I
didn't
wish
want
we'd
to
gotten to see more of Yeonji's daughter and her son-in-law, because I felt like they could have really added a lot to the story, but then we just don't see them anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, because I was reading that cast of characters at the beginning, and I was like, oh, she has a daughter, okay. And then they mentioned her, and then it was like, oh, she's dead.
She's dead. We're not going to talk about what she did when she was alive. She's gone now. That's all you need to know.
She was just like the connection between getting him to go and visit, wasn't she, really?
Yeah.
Like, her daughter died, so I think you should go and visit her. Please, go and visit her.
Although that is, I mean, like a lot of thrillers do have that kind of problem where it's like, oh, we're gonna introduce these side characters, and then they're just totally gonna disappear as soon as they're not relevant to the plot anymore. So, I mean, yes, I would have liked it if a lot of the side characters had bigger roles, because some of them could have been really interesting people, but I kind of understand why, for the purposes of the book, they disappeared. I just wish they had been there a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But overall, there was like a very sad outlook of families. If I think about, I think Wei, the husband of the of one of the scientists Wang contacts early on, and his whole outlook was, yeah, I just married my wife because then, yeah, I would be in a relationship and I would be secure, and everybody else would leave me alone. And that is my main ideal of life. I want to close the door and just make my thing, and she can earn more money and be more famous and interested in interacting with other people, but I just want to do my thing. And I'm really grateful that she married me, because now I can do that. And we don't love each other, but that's totally okay. That was a bit of a sad thing to say, this kind of marriage out of convenience. And I think there are a lot of like elements where the families of the of the protagonists, maybe except Wang, but then we don't see much of this, are kind of failed relationships, or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not really real relationships.
Yeah.
I did also think that that marriage of convenience thing, though, was a little bit more of a cultural parallel as well. Like, I think that's a little bit based on people who I know, that seems like it's a little bit more common in societies that have a tradition of like arranged marriage as opposed to sort of the like love marriage. The like idea that like, yeah, I'm going to marry someone because then I'll be financially stable and no one will bother me about getting married.
I just thought it was more that he was batshit crazy and she wanted his brain. Like,
Yeah, that's
there
what I
wasn't any
said.
kind of history of arranged marriage. Like, he was just batshit crazy, didn't give a shit. And she wanted his brain to work on physics, like, keep doing the 3-body maths. It was irrelevant. Like, she could have been sleeping with a million different people. He wouldn't have cared. It wasn't about, like, an arranged marriage because I must be left alone, otherwise everyone will be hassling me to get married. He was living in a freaking monastery up a mountain. I don't think anyone was hassling him.
The tourist did, I think.
What about being in a
One thing about the story that I guess I want to bring up is I'm kind of wondering, I guess I understand a little bit why, but why the Trisolarans did what they did by sending so much information back to Earth. I know that there was that initial transmission that UNG sent out, and the response she got was, prepare for the invasion, because that one Trisolaran sent a response back in secret, and that may have motivated everybody to be, well, we're invading, but they know we're coming anyway. But I'm kind of surprised they went through the trouble. I wish they would have just not said anything, not sent anything else back to Earth, and then nobody would believe her if she tried to raise awareness, because all I have is this transmission saying run. But if since it's going to take them 400 years to travel that distance, I'm kind of surprised they did as much as they did to inhibit mankind from even being from not developing technology and not wanting to pursue science, when if they had just done total silence, just said nothing else at that point, mankind still would have progressed, but when they arrived, they probably still could have just sprung a trap on them and been like, and here we go.
Maybe in 400 years we would have developed enough science and whatever that we could have counteracted them or caught them on the way or something. That was there.
Because that's one of the things. That's one of the things they were talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess you don't want to hinge your whole battle plan on, well, when we get there, they might be pushovers.
Okay.
One of the things that they mentioned on the Trisolarian planet was that they were so surprised about how quickly Earth had managed to advance through everything, because they've got the 3 bodies going on, and so they've had to go way longer before they've got to where they are scientifically. And so I think to them, probably Earth was crazy fast in development, so they were just really worried about, like, tomorrow they're going to get to where we are, like, let's stop this, guys, let's send out these particles and we're going to stop them, because otherwise they're going to overtake us and we are going to be stuck with our 3 suns again.
Because from that point of view there, we are kind of a paradise, because we live in one just long stable era, and that what they only know is that their whole progression only takes part in stable eras. And when they look at a society that has only that one stable era, they are afraid what we can actually do with it, and that is why they are so desperate to get away from their unstable planet and get to this kind of paradise. That was like a nice twist that the author threw in, like for the reader to think about. Maybe we see only problems in our own society, and from the point of view of a complete outsider, the amount of stability Earth gives us overall is just something we should maybe value more than we actually do in our everyday life.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that they would like choose to invade it all as opposed to like they seem to have the capacity to send multiple starships into space and like come here eventually. Why not just choose an uninhabited but inhabitable planet? Like we can identify those from space. So that was, I mean, obviously for plot, but
Yeah, that's true. Like Earth was supposed to be the closest star or something to them, wasn't it? So I think it seemed like it was just kind of out of convenience. Like, oh, it's the closest one. Let's go there. Like, sure. So that's kind of how I read it. Was like it was just really close, and they weren't expecting to find one for ages. So they thought, well, we found one. Let's just go for that. What I didn't understand is like, why did they send back a message like we're going to invade and take over? Why not try and actually cooperate? Because they've got a group on Earth who obviously kind of likes them. Why not just get the whole of the Earth society to kind of cooperate? Why come in like guns blazing and try and stop all the progression? Why not work with Earth to be like, well, we've got this technology, like, you know, if you'll welcome us and sort of do a bit of sharing and caring rather than invasion.
they still have that that communications gap, though, don't they? Like that's still part of the problem. Is that it takes so long for their communications to get to Earth.
Yeah, but they will send multiple messages over the course of the story. Like they've still received quite a lot of messages. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Once
And just to mention it very, very quickly, it takes again 4 years for a message to travel to one and 4 years back. So there's the 4 again, and they need like 400 years to come over. So again, the 4 is repeated, and maybe they can't do anything against it because the 4 means death, and they have to come in guns blazing.
Well, the last book in the series, the 3rd book, shame it's not a quadrilogy really, it's called Death's End. So.
Yeah.
You might be onto something there.
Although they do also, I mean, at the end of the book, they've developed faster than light communication, essentially, with the Earth. So
the
I mean, that does.
Or the
with the Sofan and
Sofan.
I mean, they've essentially built an ensemble from various other science fiction works, and so they can talk to Earth in real time. And I think, like based on what I got at the conclusion of the story, I got the impression that the Trisolarians believed that humans were too xenophobic and that they would be attacked if they didn't attack. Like, you know, like it's a us or them sort of situation.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like there's studies that have been done on Earth as opposed to all the studies elsewhere. In real life, that if aliens came, it wouldn't be in a Star Trek, noble fellow creatures. It would be like, we're gonna eat you now.
Yeah, and if they got this impression of the humans, it was because of the humans sent that kind of message out, because the Americans sent their message, and the Chinese sent their message, and in their message that actually arrived, they had something in about the conflict, like this is not the only way to live on Earth, we have other ways, and we're like in a struggle with each other, and maybe this idea of then coming in as a newcomer was something that is scary, because if we can't even work together in our own race, how would we accept like the Trisolarians? And the Trisolarians, for example, I think had to work as a whole race. I mean, I think what they did in the game with building this this computer out of humans, it is something that the Trisolarians actually did on their own planet. So this kind of everyone works together is something that's in their culture. And if you see our culture is totally different and we fight with each other, that might be where they think, well, maybe just wipe them out before they are mean to us.
Right, and they're already trying to like conscript them onto one side of like this epic human struggle or another. Can't inspire.
Oh, sorry. Is something going on? Are we freezing?
Yeah, for a little
A
bit.
little bit. Yeah.
Back.
Oh, okay.
We're
Was
back.
I stepping on you talking or?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. With the simulation of the three-body problem and how they had like a computer inside made out up of people and horses running around to do the calculations and everything, I thought that was really cool. And it's bizarre because people have done things like that in like Minecraft. They've actually built working integrated circuits where you flip a switch and you can actually do math through these complicated computers they've built inside Minecraft. It's really bizarre and trippy. But it was weird reading that part because I'm like, people have done that. That would take a lot of time and effort to set up.
Has anyone read The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson?
No.
At one point, it's a little girl who has a book called The Young Lady's Illustrated Primer. That's the book's alternate title. And in it, at one point, it teaches her computing from that base point, and it's like you could almost see that same thing. It's like, this is how computers work. Let's do a crash course, but with like weird illustrated like humans and whatever. And I love seeing that. It's just fascinating.
There was actually, there were a lot of kind of references to, science fiction, classic science fiction in this book. Did you guys pick up on some of those, the Ansible? And he directly mentions one of Isaac Asimov's stories. And there was some others. Oh, the ultra-thin nanomaterial wire is from, Ringworld. They also have the ultra-thin nano wire that, cuts shit. So there was a lot of... Did you guys pick up on any of that? There were a lot of references to other classic science fiction novels within the novel.
I only got the Asimov.
Well, I haven't read any sci-fi, so I didn't get any, but I'm sure there were. I obviously got the references to certain scientists and stuff, but yeah, not certain works.
Yeah, I didn't see the similarity to science fiction novels so much as I saw references to just things that had been reported in news and journals and stuff. Dang.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen them.
No one's going to get all the things.
No.
No, it sounds like there's a lot that everyone's missed, so good thing they're having this live show.
I guess also to mention, one of the people, Lao Shi, who he mentions is killed during the Cultural Revolution, is the writer who is credited with writing the first Chinese science fiction story, which is The Cat Country, which I'm actually reading right now, and it's weird. But that's one of the people who he mentions finding who got killed in the Cultural Revolution. And I don't know, I just thought that was interesting too. Lots of fun parallels. All right. So do you guys want to do... Is there anything else anyone is dying to talk about?
I want to talk about the bomb.
Oh, yeah.
But only because of this. Just less about the bomb and more about Yi Wenji's reveal. I know that was something that I had a weird time with in my review, but it wasn't because of the reveal. It was more just, or her motivations. I understood her motivations for being that way. But I was just really surprised and shocked that they chose to reveal it in this gotcha kind of way. I kind of wish they hadn't. I wish it had just been more of a gradual reveal or something that wasn't just this abrupt. And I'm the bad guy, even though I have good motivations for doing what I'm doing.
But she was the figurehead. She wasn't the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the bad guy in that she called the aliens down on our heads, but she wasn't the leader of the people who were trying to destroy science and be all cunning and evil. That was the guy on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who got sliced like a sandwich.
I did that whole scene where, so we're talking about the scene where they're at the Earth Trisolaran meeting and it's from Wang's perspective, and then Yi gets up on the stage and talks, and then the police burst in and there's that bomb thing where there's exploding things, and two of them aren't bombs and one of them is a bomb. That was kind of weird. I gotta admit, who walks around with a spring scale and a bag for weighing things just in case you run into a portable nuclear bomb? It was
escalated quickly, and I'm surprised that, again, I know this was in my review and everything, but when they said we need to check it first before we doubt you or before we really think this is a threat, we got to check it. And I don't know who would say, oh yes. I think they'd just be like, you're gonna have to just trust me that this is a bomb. This, even if it is potentially not a bomb, I'm still threatening you. So, just go with it, please. You don't want to call this bluff.
Yeah, and
I mean,
if I was
it was a
them,
little
I think I'd have just blown it up straight away. Like, don't call my bluff. Just gonna blow it up. Like, this will prove to you it's a bomb.
I mean, that would have been a killer ending.
You two spoke at the same time, Elizabeth.
Go first.
I was just going to say, like, if you're going to hold out the threat of blowing yourself and everybody else up, you need to be able to follow through.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't hold any threat.
Yeah, and what I wanted to just say, that would have been like a killer ending like the novel in this way, but I think the tension wasn't really there yet, because both our only main protagonists were in the same room. So I already knew if they had like 30 bombs or just one of the, they won't go off, because then the book would be at an end, and my percentage count said no, the book is not at an end. So yeah, so there was no tension at all in that scene for me, in a meta sense. So yeah.
And even with like because of the science fiction nature of the story, or at least the true hard science nature of the story, to all of a sudden throw in what equates to almost an action sequence felt really off. I you know, when that hard science thing, to all of a sudden leap out of that and go into, well, that escalated quickly territory, and then go back into the hard science portion of it. It really feels like that would have been handled much more differently. People would have been arrested, and then they would have done what they did eventually, which was have an interrogation with UNG and find out all that stuff.
Yeah. It definitely felt like it was just kind of shoehorned in there suddenly to get the story moving along and sort of get the information out of her and things like that. So it was a bit random. Could have definitely been done a little bit better, I think. And it wasn't that realistic.
But I felt like the most random part was like the nanofilament across the Panama Canal. Like, I guess I can see like some kind of holdup, maybe not with a nuclear bomb, but like the wire across the canal was a little much for me.
Yeah, I thought the Panama Canal scene was a little bit weird. I guess what I'm saying is, I thought anytime you tried to do like really actiony scenes, they came off a little bit weird, because those are the two most like action scenes I can think of in the book, and they both were a little bit.
That would have been like a concerted international effort. You're going to be like, no, we're going to close down the Panama. Like, seriously. Really? They're going to let you?
I had the feeling that it was a bit, maybe to integrate or justify Wang's role more, because he is actually the one that worked on the wire. And so one of the main reasons to bring him in the first place was his work on the wire, and maybe that was kind of giving him a late kind of justification to actually be part of the whole investigation in the first place. I don't know.
They're going to need him ahead of time, so it just felt very like. I mean, it was a thriller, so it was very like James Bond, like, oh, we're going to blow up the embassy, and no one will say a thing.
And I mean, we don't know how this all started. I think maybe the first thing that the author had as an image in mind, like, wow, how cool would it be, like having this huge tanker sliced up in the Panama Canal. Now I just need to write a really cultural, philosophical, scientific novel around that really cool scene. I want to. We don't know. Maybe
it was cool.
It was cool visual. It would make a cool movie scene, but it would.
But I was very much like someone like really grim sandwich meat.
Yeah.
The phone call from. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you go first, because mine is totally a little tangential.
Mine's just sarcasm, but the phone call to when you're talking about the Panama Canal and calling up the government and is it the countries that run it, calling them up and be like, "Hi, it's the Chinese government. Yeah, we want to run a wire across the Panama Canal to like slice this boat up." It's oh, why do we want to do that? Oh, there's a hard drive on the boat. Yeah, just a hard drive. That's all we need. It's
because
can we do that? Okay, good. Bye. That was.
And they'd be like, "But why do you need the hard drive?" And it's like, "Oh, the aliens."
Yeah, that was been a weird phone call.
But actually, for Evans on the boat, it was kind of like a also like a story of his life coming to an end in the same fashion, because he started out as the son of some oil industrialist, and he went up in his life against this kind of thing, because he saw what like an oil catastrophe would lead to for the birds, for the life, and many of his decisions he made in becoming this villain type were made into or that were formed him, and in the end it's an oil tanker that actually then kind of has some kind of catastrophe with it as well, that ends his life. So for him it's like coming full circle in the end as well, in his little story.
Just like science.
Wow.
It's not an oil tanker though, is it? It's like a shipping container ship.
I think it was actually an oil tanker.
Yeah. I think it said it was like a repurposed oil tanker.
Yeah.
And presumably if he like inherited an oil company, then he would have some of those available to him.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the second book, especially since it doesn't seem like they're carrying any of the main cast of characters over. So I wonder what that's going to look like.
I'm assuming we're going to jump into the future because the Trisolarans aren't going to get to Earth for 400 years. So
yeah,
maybe that's not going to happen until like late on in the third book or something. I don't know, but I can imagine we'd have a bit of a jump. Otherwise, it's all going to be like, no, but we can totally fix it in the next 10 years.
50-year jump.
Yeah. So maybe they're going to develop some space stuff.
Space stuff would be cool.
Yeah. It'll be a series that kind of moves through time, so you start with kind of the modern day, and then move to the near future, and then kind of the far future, I think. Okay,
Has anybody read Asimov's End of Eternity?
No.
Nope.
It's a time travel book. It's really good. I recommend it. And the whole thing is about changing time. And I'm totally going to spoil it for you now, sorry, but I have to do it to make my point. They change time. There are people who work in the Eternity Machine, and they can go up and down time up to a certain point and like make adjustments based on like, okay, the outcome there is very bad, so if we jump back to this point, we can like balance it out, and that doesn't make it super awful the other way. So it's like, if you could go back 50 years, you could kill Hitler. But would that be a good thing, because would somebody even more evil come up? So they can go backwards and forwards and like make it relatively good all the time. And then it gets to this point where somebody comes along and stops them and is basically like, you've got to stop this, because what you do is destroy Earth's space program every time. Make it nice enough that everybody stays on Earth and we don't keep building towards expansion and then moving to another planet. So that when we finally do get to space, everybody's already moved in, like other races and aliens and stuff. And it's like, don't be anti-science because it might be important 400 years from now. And I kind of felt like this was the same thing. It was like, don't be anti-science because we need to go to space before the aliens come.
I have to say, I do like the how positive the book was towards science, that it had a very positive feel towards science, because I feel like there's a lot of science fiction coming out now in particular that has a more negative view towards science and technology, and personally I don't like that as much, especially with like the kind of the rise of the dystopian novels. A lot of those are not necessarily intentionally anti-science, but kind of incidentally, and so I liked that it had overall very positive feel towards science. That was Sorry, that was what your story made me think of.
No, I thought the same thing. It's like science fucks things up, but it also fixes them. So I kind of felt like it came out positive in the end.
Well, I think it's going to lead to a really positive view of just humanity, and I kind of like that because in the long run, there's no way that they're going to win without everybody working together, and I think that that's going to be. Sorry to be a total like hippy dippy about it, but like that's going to make my heart happy.
Yeah, I kind of want the aliens to win. Like, I think that would be quite interesting. I quite like the idea of them coming to Earth and being like, yeah, now we've got a good era. We can get even further ahead of everyone, and we can save every other planet. I quite like that idea.
Did there be anybody who wanted the aliens to win?
How did the aliens win, people? How did the aliens win? Well, they did it by working together a lot harder than we did. Thanks, people.
All right, anything else
Maybe we can.
you wanted to talk about in particular, or we pretty much? I think that was pretty much everything that I thought of in advance. Was there anything else anyone specifically wanted to talk about?
I think the cover art's cool on the Chinese versions and the English versions. I think the cover art's really nifty.
It is very nice.
I've seen the Chinese version. Look it up.
I think if you did this as a movie, but Proton unfolding into multiple dimensions would be a super trippy scene. Maybe with the movie just as a whole.
That's the scene I was thinking they would never film because it would just be impossible.
Well, with
really
the
hard
floating
to do that.
eyeballs and.
Yeah. Oh, thinking back to Michael's point about what would happen to the protons and things, didn't it go wrong 4 times?
No, it went
Already?
wrong twice.
I think twice. The first 2.
It went wrong twice, yeah.
And then they
There's
created
eyeball-
4 that worked out.
No,
The
2
third
worked
time?
out. They
They
were
were
only
trying to-
2 to Earth.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
they
then there
only
were
sent.
2 on the back,
Two
so
and
that
then
they could
2
have the
more.
faster than
Yeah.
communication.
Because one unfolded into one dimension or something, didn't it? Like one didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one went too far or something. It was interesting.
And actually, I forgot that in that point about in being caught up about the 4. If you because I talked about a lot of the 6 that is made up of the 4 and the 2. The 6, seen as a negative number in Chinese culture, is fall and decline. And this element of fall and decline plays also a part in this kind of the cultural revolution. I think this is why why there is the number 6 used with the number 4, for example.
So do you think it's saying the aliens are going to fall in decline, or the humans are going to fall in decline?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, if you get it onto a really meta level, when you say like he talks about the cultural revolution, and then he talks about the aliens, and that is an exaggeration. So in the end, going back, he talks about the cultural revolution, of course, and maybe about what came out of it. So I thought if that this novel was actually really a critique about the whole cultural revolution, with the example of the exaggeration of the aliens. So he goes back there as well. So on the real interpretation level, he talks about, of course, the cultural revolution in China and what it did to science.
I would agree with that. I picked up on that too. That it's kind of a parallel. Yes. All right. So, anything else, or should we wrap up?
We've been going nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
going nearly 2 hours, so this is probably long enough, I would expect. Anyone? Okay, so yeah.
Is that it? We done? There's no comments and things. So.
No,
There
just
are not.
just that one that I could see.
Good. Okay.
All right, so thanks to everyone for participating. And maybe we'll have some more discussions in the future when the rest of the books come out. And yeah, I'm going to stop the broadcast now.
Okay.